The system killed my mom without giving her the true information. There was a study done in 2019 in the Journal of Nutrition by Kaiser Permanente, and they evaluated those who followed the standard of care. They changed the way they eat, they were exercising, they were trying or losing weight and taking medication. That's considered standard of care. How many actually were able to put their diabetes into remission, which meant they were no longer taking medication and non-diabetic? It was 0.23%. Quarter of a percent were actually able to reverse or put their diabetes in remission. Lifestyle alone is not the fix of diabetes. They know their system doesn't work, but are they telling people that? No.
Hey there, I'm Bria, and welcome to the Period Whisperer podcast. If you're over 35 and ready for real answers about your hormones, you're in the right place. Hit subscribe and stay with us. Hey there, sisters. Welcome back to the Period Whisperer podcast, where we talk about all things female hormones and health in midlife and decode these messages and really try to make them simple and actionable for you. One of the things I think we hear a lot about in midlife is like when we're wanting to make changes to our health, to how we feel in our body, to our hormones as they navigate this transition, is about blood sugar and insulin. I have found that most of what we've been told about blood sugar and insulin resistance is either incomplete or sometimes just flat out wrong. So if you are in perimenopause, which I am willing to bet you are, and that's why you are here, that misinformation can leave you feeling stuck, frustrated, and questioning everything you're doing. So today we're going to go deeper, which I'm very excited about. We're talking about what's really driving insulin resistance, why it often shows up in midlife, and what your body is actually asking for. I'm joined by the amazing Dr. Jason Shumard, who works with patients struggling with metabolic issues at a root cause level, which I love, and helps them finally understand what's been missing. So let's get into it. Welcome, Dr. Jason, to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to this.
Yes, me too. I'm very much looking forward to it. I love the work that you do. I appreciate the content you put out. But let's start here. I'd love for you to share a little bit about your story, like what led you to focus on insulin resistance and metabolic health, and what kind of patients do you work with today?
Yeah, so it's kind of an interesting one, and as a I'm a doctor of chiropractic. I graduated school in 2004, and I went into the story. I went to chiropractic school because of the philosophy that the body has the ability to heal itself, and that's why I really love that. And I didn't want to get into not to say too many negative things about just being prescribing pharmaceuticals, and I knew I just wanted a different way, a different path. Well, my path continued to change as I was going through school because my mom was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes during that time.
Wow.
And as many people probably thought, like at least I did at the time, that it's a manageable disease, right? Change your diets, exercise, lose some weight, take your medication, it's manageable. And as long as you keep your numbers in check, your body's going to do well and you're going to be okay. Well, that wasn't further from the truth, right? I saw as these things were progressing in my mom, her health was declining, but not like dramatically, but she was taking more medications and increasing things. And I just like, there's something inside of me. And maybe it was because of my education at the time. I just knew there had to be a better way.
Yeah.
And so at the school I went to, they were very open to different types of techniques and different types of things. So I found functional medicine. I don't know how exactly it was. Maybe it was a colleague or somebody came to speak in my school. I don't remember exactly what it was, but as a student, I was able to start doing some courses at a cheaper rate, which always is a nice thing.
Yeah.
So I started taking some courses in functional medicine, and it really resonated with me because it was about this, allowing the body to heal itself once you understand what areas are broken or are not working properly. And so it continued to me. I just like if there has to be a better way. And so when I graduated school, I continued doing different additional courses, and finally got to a point where I was like, I feel really confident, and at this phase that I can help somebody with insulin resistance or type 2 diabetes. And again, it was my mom that really triggered me to go down this path because that wasn't my intention. I wanted to be an athletic chiropractor. I want to work with athletes and everything, and that was my goal because that's what I did. But of course, there's a different path in the things that happen in our life.
Yeah.
And so I started, had all this information, and I came to her and my dad, and I was like, listen, guys, I have this information. I feel like we can do some things for your diabetes. I feel like we can get you to reverse your diabetes or go into remission. And they wanted nothing to do with it.
Oh,
They wanted nothing to do with it. And maybe it was because I came on a different path, but I actually told them what they needed to do ahead of time rather than testing and doing some analytics and trying to find out what's going on with them first.
Yeah.
But my mom was not interested in changing her lifestyle more than she already had done. She was not interested in doing what I was recommending, like, supplements and things of that nature. And mainly because her doctors were telling her she was doing fine. Her A1C was in a good place. She wasn't having a lot of major symptoms. Yeah, she's in her 60s at the time, and she was seeing decline in energy and things of that nature. But they were chopping that up to just older, getting older, if you will. Well, if we fast forward, maybe 5, 10 years down the road, well, that's when things started getting really, really bad for her. Right? She was now taking insulin, and things continued to progress over time. And eventually, I got a phone call. Ironically enough, when I was on my way to do a presentation on diabetes to another group, is when I got the phone call from my parents telling me that her kidneys are failing and now she's going into dialysis. And so now they were like seeking help,
Yeah.
right? A little bit too late. And even though I tried, 8 months later, she had a stroke and she passed. Like, that is how rapid this thing happened, and I think so many people don't understand that insulin resistance or poor blood sugar, where it can end up, because in the early stages, people feel fine. They don't really notice it. I mean, oftentimes people go in for a routine checkup and their blood sugars are almost 500 and they don't even know it
Yeah.
because they don't see it. They don't feel the impacts of it, because what diabetes does, because it's a cellular disease, it destroys over time. And then eventually one day you just walk off a cliff.
Oh man, I'm so sorry to hear that. That is a tough
It was very challenging, and it was heart-wrenching, and we had, like, arguments, times we didn't speak for a long time because my dad was an enabler at the time, like, "Oh, just let her do what she wants to do. She's lived this long life. She's already in her 60s or 70s at this point. Let her do what she wants to do." And I'm like, "But you're killing her." And then eventually that happened, and, you don't wanna see that "I told you so" situation, so I took that a different area and said, "Okay, enough is enough." And now this is 2021 when this happened, and I immediately left, and I just said, "Okay, this is where things are going to change, right? I'm gonna start yelling from the mountaintops. I'm gonna start speaking the truth." Because for a long time, I just didn't want a target on my back, right? I just wanted to be this person, like, helping my local community and not have this huge target on my back, and so now I'm like, "I don't even care. If you wanna come after me," because the system killed my mom without giving me the true information. And so now it's my turn to start giving that information for those who wanna hear it.
It is hard to be sticky, I think, in all of the noise we have in with social media and media these days, if you don't take a stand, but it's also, I think, as a human, it's really, empathetic to sit and think, well, maybe one thing is not right for everyone. So it can be
Yep.
difficult, but I appreciate that you took your stand because I think from your experience, this is what matters.
100%, and I always say this is a passion,
Yeah.
that I have. It's, of course, it helps, provide for my family. It's that sort of thing, but it's really, this is the legacy of my mom, and I wanna help as many people are open to getting help. Like, I created it was probably a little bit overzealous, but I created a mission at that point that I wanted to change the lives of 1,000,000 people. When I left the hospital that day, because I was there, I held my mom's hand on her last breath. Like, I saw the whole process. Like, it was devastating. I was angry, I was sad, I was emotional. I went through every single emotion you can think of because I knew I had an answer. I had the key, but the person wasn't open to taking the key and utilizing it. And so I learned a lesson is that if I can't convince my mom, I can't convince anybody else. So that lesson taught me, like, I have the knowledge for those who are interested in learning how to do this.
I'm excited to learn from you today, and I know the women listening are. And like I said, in my practice, I see the blood work, I see the impact, I hear the stories from my clients, and I do think like you were saying, most women are told that blood sugar issues come down to eating correctly, or maybe you're eating too many carbs and sugar. But I have absolutely seen this otherwise in practice. I have most women that come to me are really quite diligent about their nutrition, and in fact, my mom was who's very active, very good at her eating and nutrition, ran into the same thing where it's like, "Oh, my blood sugars are elevated. Why? That doesn't make any sense." So, from your perspective, what's actually happening in the body that they're missing?
Yeah, I think a part of this is if we want to take that model there to understand what's really going on. I mean, it's very simplistic because the lifestyle does play a role, but there's also mechanisms in your body for individuals who are doing a good job, and they're like, why am I not losing weight? I'm eating the right foods. I'm doing my intermittent fasting. I'm exercising, all these things, and they just cannot lose weight.
Yeah.
But when you look at the body on a simplistic level, the human being is to consume food. That food gets broken down into glucose or sugar, and then the body uses that sugar, right? Now, to go a little further, if we want to use a little bit of the science behind this, there's this the GI breaks down the food, triggers a response to the pancreas to release insulin. And as the sugar gets released into your bloodstream, and by the way, that makes a big difference. So the type of food you're eating will determine the type how fast that release is happening. When you're eating things like refined sugars or sweets and things of that nature, it's going to rapidly release high numbers, which will push high levels of insulin. There's a reason why I'm saying that because that makes a big difference.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're doing things like animal protein, it's a slower release, or if you're doing things like vegetables, because the fiber, it's a slower release, and that makes a huge difference in these that insulin response. So once insulin is released, it attaches to the sugar and then drags itself over to one of the cells. At that cell, there's a receptor, which is called an insulin receptor. Think of that as like a door lock, right? And the insulin attaches and unlocks the door that now allows the sugar to enter, gets into our mitochondria, which is our cells, are inside our cells, the batteries or the engines. Now that's how we produce ATP, and it's how we function as human beings.
Yeah.
Now, it's a simple process. It's very simplistic, but that whole mechanism can be broken down very simply. So let's take the same scenario, and now this individual is eating, I don't know, let's say more fructose than normal, right? Not even just like they're eating it's more of the like vegetarian type diet, right? Where they're eating a lot more fruits, vegetables, and even some carbs. Well, when you do that, it rapidly starts releasing this sugar into the system and then a rapid release of insulin. The problem is when you start rapidly releasing insulin, this is not a single incident. We're talking about years, decades. Well, too much insulin surrounding a cell is like throwing too much water on a plant. It destroys and kills the plant. So it does the same thing and the receptors start breaking down.
Yeah.
And there's the ability for insulin to attach is now deficient. Now we call that insulin resistance. So now if the insulin can't attach, the door can't open. So where does the sugar go? Goes back in the bloodstream, starts raising the sugar in the bloodstream. And as this happens over months, years, and decades, eventually going for a blood test, you got this elevated sugar.
Yeah.
And so the whole mechanism is not the sugar itself, which is where all the treatment's being done. It's the cell and the receptor.
Mm.
So if we can figure out how to fix this guy,
Yeah.
the insulin can now attach. The sugar goes down the bloodstream because now it's entering your cells, and now you function a lot better as a human being.
Okay, so there's when we're thinking about like working with this or avoiding this, there's kind of two ways. There's one, eating in a way, of course, and having a lifestyle that reduces the load of it coming in that might tire it out. And then the other piece is how do we actually repair really this cell, the connector in a way that's maybe not functioning the way it should be.
Yep, that's 100%. And then when you look at it, so that's why lifestyle can play a role
Yeah.
in helping. That's why individuals that get like diagnosed with pre-diabetes, right, which is like what I call pre-pregnancy. There is none. It's already happening. It's happening. It's occurring. This problem is occurring here, right?
Yeah.
And so this is already happening. So lifestyle, if you make those changes, yeah, now you lower your load and you're helping to get these sugars into the cells that are now working. But what about the ones that are still broken?
Yes.
They're still sitting here, still broken. And on top of that, we haven't even discussed other problems
Yeah.
that could be contributing to damage in these cells. GI inflammation or gastrointestinal inflammation or even leaky gut problems, which can impede or impact the ability for sugar to be released too quickly or not enough as well. Or even the breaking down the assimilation of your food, the dysbiosis in the microbiome and breaking down and getting those nutrients your body needs. That's one mechanism, right? We have another one, which is the probably everyone on this call is gonna like their ears are gonna start to perk up when I say this gland, the adrenal glands, right? Everyone talks about the adrenal glands and how massive they are, but the reality is the reason why adrenal glands play a role is because when you are overproducing cortisol, well, cortisol is a hormone that disrupts insulin receptors. They block insulin receptors from doing their job. It's because they have a similar mechanism as insulin, because that's a hormone as well, right? The thyroid is another big one. The the liver, the kidney, all these areas start to break down. And we have this, what happens over time when our liver and kidney and our gut are not working properly, we start to get toxic burdens because we can't eliminate them. And now we get this huge vicious cycle going in our body where we're saying, we're eating all the right stuff, we're doing all the right things. Why am I not getting any better? Because you're only looking at a very small percentage of the problem. This is a big problem,
Yeah.
but this is the problem that people think if they just fix this, everything else goes away. And unfortunately, even the stats are clear. And there was a study done in 2019 in the Journal of Nutrition by Kaiser Permanente that everyone on the West Coast of the US is very familiar with Kaiser Permanente. They're a massive hospital,
Yeah.
but they followed somewhere between like 3 to 500,000 people, and they evaluated those who followed the standard of care, right? And the definition of standard of care is they changed the way they eat. That didn't get specifics on that, by the way, just changed the way they eat. They were exercising, they were trying or were actively losing weight and taking medication. That's considered standard of care.
Huh.
And they evaluated and said, what is the percentage of these individuals after a period of time of following that recommendation? How many actually were able to put their diabetes into remission? Right? That's the term used, remission, which meant they were no longer taking medication and non-diabetic.
Okay.
Well, the information was staggering, right? It was 0.23%. Zero. That means a quarter of a percent were actually able to reverse or put their diabetes in remission by following that, which tells you very specifically that lifestyle alone is not the fix of diabetes.
Quarter of a percent.
Quarter of a percent.
Did they say how long the study was done? Do you recall that?
I don't remember off the top of my head, but if you go to like PubMed and you look in Kaiser Permanente type 2 diabetes journal of nutrition, you'll see the study in there and give the numbers are massive, right? They evaluated tons of people and they know their system doesn't work, but are they telling people that? No.
And is that then simply because we understand it's not, again, lifestyle plays a role, but it's clearly not the role. We have to look much deeper at the gut, at the liver, at the thyroid, at the adrenals, at
Yeah.
every aspect of the body to see what is the root cause of this insulin resistance.
Yeah, because if you think about it, this poor lifestyle, it takes decades. Like when somebody gets diagnosed with diabetes, let's say it's 2026,
Mhm.
this is not when it started.
Yeah.
This problem started 10 to 20 years before. So if we're talking 20 years of this poor lifestyle causing this damage over time, guess what? It's going to damage your liver. It's going to damage your kidneys, your guts. It's going to damage your adrenal glands because that's your stress gland. So all these things are becoming damaged. If you change your lifestyle, it doesn't fix the problems. They're still there.
Yeah.
You have to go in and manually or address them appropriately with specific protocols to turn them back on. The lifestyle alone will not do the fix.
And then how does this hormonal shift in perimenopause into menopause, how does this impact it? I mean,
Yeah, huge.
yeah.
Huge. Because again, I told you this at the beginning. I'm gonna preface this now. Take this with a grain of salt, everyone, because that's come from a male perspective. But I'm using physiology, and I want you to understand the whole process here. But for a female, because men don't go through this, right? Females at a certain point in their life, their ovaries stop producing hormones, right? They're not producing the hormones, so now they rely on two different areas. Part of it is their fat cells. Their fat cells will be part of that hormonal balance, but most of it is coming from adrenal response.
Mhm.
So think about this. You've now got an adrenal glands, and its main job is to address stressful environments, right? We're not just talking about the mental stressors, physical stressors, chemical stressors, all of these. And so its job is now portion of when you're menstruating and when you're having still normal ovarian production here, you still have a percentage of your adrenals that are still producing hormones,
Yeah.
right? You've got one side is this production of hormones,
Yeah.
right? You got the pregnenolone, DHEA, testosterone, estrogen, progesterone production over there, and the other side is cortisol. So now you're now asking your adrenal glands to take over essentially 90% of your hormone production. If your adrenal glands are already problematic because it's overly producing cortisol because of the stressful environment, think about how challenging this is going to be on your adrenal glands to handle hormone production. And we wonder why there's such a struggle. The physiology states that it should be like one day to the next for a female. They should be like no more menstruation. They still feel the same way because their body is set up to produce these hormones. But we talk about being a mom. Maybe you work and you have maybe you're having financial issues or relationship issues. All these things build up over many many years,
Yeah.
and your adrenal gland just go. And now you're asking to do this extra production,
Yeah.
that becomes very challenging. And that excessive cortisol production is going to impact your brain, the way your brain functions. And remember, we have the pituitary and hypothalamus, major issues for um, hormone production, those areas, which is going to disrupt the communication to the rest of the body. So it's like blocking the freeway, right? It becomes a major issue, and everything becomes this catastrophic event.
Yeah.
So to really, if you want to address this, we have to understand, okay, what are those mechanisms? Well, mental stressors, we can't. There's nothing you can deal with, right? Ways of like going to counseling or speaking to somebody, or breathing techniques, meditation, these sort of things.
Nervous system
Whatever,
regulation.
religion, whatever this can help you, right? But the physical and chemical ones, we can address those things,
Yeah.
right? Physical problems, chemical. Now, if you think about that, that's 2/3 of your stressful environment. So if you address 2/3 of your stressful environment and now you're still dealing with a third, that's still a lot, right? But think about how much easier it is to deal with it now.
Yes, much. And that third, I think, becomes even less because you have the capacity to handle it.
1000%, right? And, I always say, I'm not saying your mental stressors aren't a big issue. And I guarantee they probably are, but in reality, they're usually the cherry on top, right? It's the straw that broke the camel's back, because you have this mountain of other stressful environments, and this one up here is what's tipping you over. But if we remove that mountain, think about how much more we have to offer now.
Yeah, how much easier it is to address it, to move it, to breathe through it, or to use these other techniques to handle the mental,
That's right.
emotional
That's right.
aspect. I couldn't agree more. I think that's I always say that to my clients. I'm like, I can't impact what's going on outside of your body, but if we can reduce what's going on inside of your body, then the capacity to handle is so great.
1000%. And if they can grasp that, because it's hard, because when you're in that emotional stressor, that's all you think about. And you're like, no, this is the only reason why I'm feeling this way. But when you start showing them and start chipping away at this other stressful environment, like, wow, I just feel like I'm able to manage this better now. And they really now start to grasp it.
Yeah, for sure. I'm like holding myself back because I want to ask you, okay, well, what do we do here? How do we get these like cells back to life? But where do you see the biggest gaps in standard lab work when it comes to understanding our own blood sugar and metabolic health? Like, what should
Yeah.
we be looking at? What are we not getting? What can we be asking for? What do you like to run?
Yeah. I think, unfortunately, in the standard medical care, because they're looking for results quicker, they're going to run blood tests, right? And again, you can get some good data by looking at the hormones. You can look at your estrogen, your testosterone, progesterone, DHEA, all those things. You can look at that, and you can get some really good markers from there. But the reality is, it's only giving you an incident in time.
Yeah.
It's only telling you what's happening at that time. And 24 hours, it could be totally different. A week could be totally different. That's why, even with thyroid numbers, because it can be changing so rapidly.
Mm.
So I like to use more of like metabolite analysis, like the Dutch urine test is a phenomenal test. The reason why I love the Dutch test so much is because you can not only tell what's going on with your hormones right now, but you can trace out where the problem is coming from.
Yeah.
Right, on a blood test, you could potentially do that if you understand the physiology of it, and you can see, well, yeah, your DHEA is low, and that's why you're having low testosterone and why your estrogens are lower, because your testosterone's being you're converting your estrogens from testosterone, even in females. That's what's happening from it, right? And so if you're not converting it properly, or if you don't have that proper building blocks, it could be pregnenolone. Well, how often is pregnenolone tested in a blood test?
Yeah. None.
Hard. I've never seen it really, ever, right? And so you can really see these things happening from a Dutch perspective. So the only problem is it takes longer to get the results, right? Because you have to you do the testing, and that itself is a lot, because it's 4 or 5 different tests in a day.
Yeah.
And the reason why it's important is because you can now identify cortisol levels throughout the day. On a blood test, you look at one time of cortisol level, unless you go in multiple times, which is very rare that ever happens. But that's so you get a full analytics of your adrenal glands and that circadian rhythm, which is what it should be highest in the morning, right? That's that internal alarm clock. When you wake up first thing in the morning, how often does that happen? You're like, many of you may be saying never, but that's what's supposed to happen. You're supposed to just wake up and have all this like energy, because you just dumped a bunch of cortisol, which is stimulating to your brain.
Yeah.
And then throughout the day, it's slowly dissipating. And then by nighttime, it should be at its lowest. So now you can go to sleep.
Yeah.
But we have individuals that say, "But I wake up between 2 and 3 AM every single night." Well, that is a cortisol dump, and why is that happening? Insulin resistance, blood sugar fluctuations.
Yeah.
It's the most common what's happening. So you're gonna blood sugar fluctuation, which is addressing cortisol production. It's waking you up, and you have a hard time going to sleep
Yeah.
going on. this is a common thing that happens with individuals who have adrenal blood sugar dysregulation there. But that's why I love the Dutch so much, because you can look at so many things. It's got a mini oats in there as well, which is a great little analytics to see what's going on with certain nutrients, and is there potential for GI issues. There's just so much information that's valuable there. But of course, it's never done in the medical model.
Yeah, I agree. I love the Dutch because it finger points to some of these other areas that you were talking about. Like, well, is it in the gut? Is it in the liver? Is it in the thyroid? Like, it really at least helps us start to connect those dots to know how to support.
But it's challenging because you look at that test and people are like,
Yeah. Yeah.
What is am I looking at an odometer? Like, what going on here? Like, what's happening?" And I get it, even though there's, like, an encyclopedia at the end that tells you everything, and it's like, but it's still using scientific words and stuff. So it can be very challenging. So you do need to find someone who knows how to read it, analyze it, and then give you, more importantly, probably what needs to be done to stabilize things. Because sometimes it's just giving you building blocks. Sometimes it's just giving you DHEA, or even giving you pregnenolone to give you the building blocks you need so your body can start producing the hormones until you address the adrenal response, and then everything starts to kick in itself.
Yeah. So you think the biggest reason why we see almost insulin resistance start to peak more in perimenopause, we'd say, is because really of the adrenal impact.
100%.
But there are, it's like I always think we're already juggling so many balls, and now you just threw another ball into the mix, so balls are dropping.
Yeah, it's a big component there, right? In regards to hormonal response there, I mean, this person could still have gut issues. They could still have, poor detoxification skills, the liver is not working well, or even some like early signs of toxin burden, inflammation, infection patterns. We can go on and on and on. But from a direct correlation with the hormonal aspect, I think the adrenal glands is the biggest component.
I love that. I agree with you. Is there anything else you love to run beyond a Dutch for your clients when it comes to like in blood sugar regulation and this piece?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So for me, the two baseline tests that I run is what we call our root cause analysis. It's a comprehensive blood test, and of course, that kind of word is thrown around a lot. But I want to look at all the different organs of the body. Like, I give this example. I've mentioned this a couple of times about the thyroid. In a traditional medical model, they're typically going to run two tests, right? TSH and free T4. That's pretty much the extent you're going to get analyzed. But you need to look at other things. You got to look at total T4, got to look at total T3, free T3, reverse T3. You got to look at the antibodies. Many people have positive antibodies without even a thyroid issue yet. Well, that's a precursor telling you there's a problem going on, and now you're seeing your future that that's going to happen unless you address the reason why the antibodies are developing here. So that's and looking at things like that, like the liver. Typically in the medical model, they'll run two of the liver markers, but there's actually three. Just looking at things a little more comprehensively to identify where things are broken. So in a functional medicine and analytics, we're looking at the check engine lights. That's I kind of like that, the check engine lights, right? Because and when I say check engine lights, when you look at the reference ranges on a blood test, that's somebody who is already in the red, who's outside of that range there. So when you look at the more of a functional health, I always think of it as like the midline between the reference range is a good kind of little spot there.
Yeah.
If you're outside of that healthy functional range, you're not in a disease process yet, but you're moving there.
Yeah.
Your body is things are breaking down and things are happening, and then you can either wait until it gets outside that range, and now you can have a problem and you're on medications, or you can identify it before to get you back. So this is why I teach our patients, listen, every 6 months I go get a blood test done. And I don't have a disease process. I'm not sick. Hopefully we'll knock on some wood just to kind of keep that there. But I want to identify, is there a problem going on? Right. And this tells me, okay, now I've got a new thing to work on. So I can alternate my protocols. So I'm constantly trying to optimize and not trying to just, you know, set it and like I'm good to go and wait for a problem to happen down the road. And if we think about our bodies this way, when we get our cars checked out for our problems, there's lots of things that we do to maintain in our life, but how often do we do things to maintain our body, or do we wait till we just get sick and then we want to maintain it? This is a very active approach. It's not that expensive. I mean, I can get a full comprehensive blood test for maybe, I don't know, a couple $100. So it's not that expensive at all. Very cheap, and lab cores or quests can be done easily. They're in every single city, pretty much in every part of the country, very easy and accessible. So it's easy, but the problem is most people are relying on their insurance, it's just not going to test thoroughly enough.
It's a beginning of empowering, like, talking about these things, I think is a really important beginning to empower people to save for, like, their health optimization. Like you were saying, we with cars, we get them checked to maintain them, we have kind of the ins and outs of our homes checked. If you work in a corporate environment, you're gonna have routine, reviews to keep you high in peak performance, and our body is no different. It really needs to be looked at like a strategic CEO.
100%. I mean, most of us are investing into our futures for financial freedom or to at least get to a place where we can retire and live a quality of life and not have to worry about money running out. But how many of us are investing into our health?
Yeah.
And we expect to get dividends from our retirement plans, whatever else. But unless you invest into your health, how are you expecting to get the dividends that you want?
Yeah.
Right. And I think that has to be part of your plan to make sure you're taking care of your body. Because so many times I knew, especially in my demographics who I work with in the diabetes world, they're now in a retirement age, but they're sick. They can't enjoy their life. They have no energy. They don't want to go do anything. No motivation. I'm like, you busted your tail for so many years, and now you're just sitting on a couch all day long. That's not fair. You should be, having fun, traveling, enjoying your life, and that's what it should be like as long as we do the right steps in place.
Yeah, I love that. It's a good way of just shifting the channel, changing the perspective in our mind around how we get to invest in ourselves in that.
Yeah. Yeah. Going back to your question though, that's the first test that we do is the blood test. The
Okay.
second test that we do as a baseline test is a toxicity test because what we find are so many individuals are dealing with toxic burden that they're not even aware of, right? Heavy metals, molds, even environmental toxins. You may be familiar with this. We use Vibrant America's test, total toxicity test, which is a phenomenal test for anybody who's looking to get this analytics. It's the best because they test more than anyone else and they have phenomenal analytics. I mean, I think it's something like 25 or 30 different mold species is it's like 15 to 20 different heavy metals and like 45 to 60 different environmental toxins. I mean, it's a massive test, all in one test, a simple urine test first thing in the morning, and that's it. It's very easy to do, and it takes about 2 3 weeks to get the results back. It's a great test. So we have both those tests. We can now get a clear picture of where the body is doing well and where it's not, so then it gives us a much easier place to find out how to optimize and put a customized plan together for them.
Yeah, and when would you choose to opt for a Dutch in there or to add a Dutch to this plan?
Yeah, I think typically for me, usually we'll run like a Dutch either once we've completed this type of areas here, we've kind of addressed these things and they're still having other symptoms that are going on, or they came in with additional hormone symptoms as well that they're having. Because remember, a lot of the people that work or that we see in our office, like they're 55, 60 years old, so they're past that time, if you will, but we still get some like, mid 40s to early 50s that'll still be in this place as well.
Yeah.
And so we can still do that. It's just not part of our baseline testing. That would be an add-on test that we'd run if necessary for that individual.
So we're talking to women obviously in this midlife land. So we know that, of course, you mentioned when it comes to lifestyle, we know that exercise is helpful. We understand that, a more like plant-based and fiber-filled carbohydrate and, or sorry, not plant-based, animal fat-based and animal protein-based and fiber-filled
Yeah.
carbohydrate is a good part of the lifestyle. These labs can really help us point in, but are there anything specific or, that women can do to help these cells kind of come back to life and open up for the key?
The lifestyle changes have to be there. Like think of this as like the foundation, right? If you don't have what's the term I use? We used nutrition as like it's a basically to create an environment that's conducive to healing, right? That's a huge component to there. But if you have these other issues as well, right? If you have a liver problem, kidney, adrenal, toxicities, those sort of those things are damaging your cells. They're impacting the cells to do their job effectively. So even if you threw in mitochondrial support or whatever else, it's not going to make much of a difference. You have to make sure that those areas are working better and efficiently because if it's not, how is your body going to assimilate the things you're taking? How is it going to utilize it appropriately? So we've got to stabilize all of that. Like I always say, the type of stuff that we do is not sexy,
Yeah.
right? We're like the concrete guys up there in the rubber boots, making the concrete smooth and everything. Because if your foundation of your house is not good, I don't care how nice your house is going to fall over.
Yeah.
But the sexy part of a house is the house, right? The flooring, the walls, the color, the cabinetry, everything like that. But that's you build up there once your foundation is strong. And all the stuff that we do is foundational work. And then from there, it's very easy because you can just be given the things you need to do. Okay, these are things this is what we recommend for mitochondrial support. This is what we recommend for reducing inflammation in your body. Here's your nutrition plan. Here's how to support and maintain healthy sugars and healthy insulin responses and adrenal response, and even some balancing of the hormones and everything as well. So all that stuff happens after the foundation. All those major losses that are not working properly from decades of damage are stabilized. Now your cells can start doing their job better. So in our office, which interesting is, and people always like look at me like, "What do you mean?" Like we literally give our patients nothing for blood sugar support ever. All we do is focus on those areas found in the testing, and once they get to a certain threshold, their sugars start dropping naturally. Their medication starts going away. And everyone's like, "Well, how's that possible?" I'm like, "Because your cells are not working better." Think about this. You came in with an A1C of a 9.0.
Mm.
You now have an A1C of a 5.6 with no medication,
Yeah.
and you were on medication before. Like this is indicating this is not because you have a better diet.
Yeah.
It's because your cells are healthier and they're now able to do their job because your body wants to be able to do this. It has limiting factors. Once you remove those limiting factors, it can go back to that.
Mm.
It's no different. I don't care who you are, if you're 25 years old or 95 years old, you have the ability to heal once you optimize what's going on in your body.
I love that. So the first step obviously is always like building that strong foundation with your nutrition, it sounds like for you. And I would assume movement and nervous system regulation might be a part
Oh, yeah.
for sure. And then we use these labs for like to really define the root cause. Like where is our lowest hanging fruit to make that
Yep.
difference for you?
Absolutely. And then we'll retest to identify to make sure it's in a good place. And now we can start optimizing even further, which is about every 6 months, checking your blood tests and making sure everything's looking good and getting your body healthier and healthier. And this is where people start, they're 65, 75 years old and going out and enjoying their life again, enjoying it with their grandkids or going on vacation with their significant other and actually getting away from not having to be around their doctor all the time because they're worried about a heart attack or something major going on. These things are going away because their body is healthier, and their doctor's sitting there thinking like, "What are you doing?" "Oh, it must be the nutrition. Great job, keep up the good way you're eating your food." And I'm like, "I don't care what they say because it's all about you getting healthy,
Yeah.
right?" And I don't care if I don't need the recognition. I don't want recognition because to be honest with you, I didn't do this. Your body did this.
Yeah.
You did this.
Yeah.
You just needed the tools. Once you had the tools and you committed to it, you've done this for yourself. This is where you should take the congratulations and pat your own back.
What would you say are kind of 2 to 3 simple foundational shifts that you recommend then for people?
I mean, obviously, you said it before. I think, we'll talk about lifestyle first, right? So the first thing on lifestyle, I think you said it, and it sounds like you have a similar belief that I do. We need the animal protein. We need a whole food nutrition, right? We live out of our refrigerator. We die out of our cupboard, right? So we want to eat that perishable food. Phenomenal. I think fasting should be okay, but 12 hours to 14. And if you want to do a 1 to 3 day, once a month, totally fine. But if you're doing it consistently, I think that can be potentially negative in some people.
Yeah.
So I think that is big. Exercise. We need to get moving, right? And the biggest thing, especially for females, was the most challenging is you've got to lift heavy weights.
Yeah.
It's so important to lift. And I'm not saying you want to be the Arnold Schwarzenegger, but lifting heavy weights is so key because like the muscle density, bone health, because osteoporosis and osteopenia, bone health comes from pressure. So we need that pressure on the joints. So exercise with weights can help with that. And then, of course, if you just do your cardiovascular stuff in there as well, but getting the heavy weights in is going to be key. That's like one component that should be done. And it's challenging, especially for someone who doesn't feel good to want to go and do those things. And that's why we have to work on that foundational stuff to get them feeling good so they can start doing those things.
Yeah.
From a perspective and like from a we'll call it a supplementation perspective, make sure your hormones are stabilized, right? That it can be with HRT if you need it. I don't have a problem with HRT if you need it, but oftentimes even just building blocks can help out. I'll give you one for your audience is a phenomenal product for those who are still having like this like menopausal type symptoms, even though your hormones are in check. There's a phenomenal product out there called Macapause by Feminiscence. If you guys know what that is, I'm sure
No.
your eyes are open, so
Yeah.
you do know about it. So, and what's great is, and this is phenomenal that this was created for females because it essentially, when you're taking HRT or you're trying to boost hormones, you can create hormone sensitivity, right? Meaning because your hormones require a receptor, and if those receptors are becoming damaged because you have too many hormones, what Macapause does is it really opens them to stabilize them to get stronger. So you can get those hormones because you can have all the hormones, get a blood test and normal estrogens, normal progesterone, but if they're not getting your receptors, you're gonna feel like crap.
I think there's so many benefits for many people with hormone replacement therapy. And we have to make sure those receptors are good. And we have to make sure they're clearing properly, which brings
Yep.
us to liver gut.
Using things like DEM is a phenomenal thing to help clearance things as well. So those are all things that are key. And then of course, I think, probably the additional go-tos is magnesium, huge, huge, huge magnesium. I think if you're looking for things for GI function, magnesium citrate's the best option. But if you're looking for things like for overall magnesium health and benefit for boosting magnesium, your glycinate, githionate, those things are going to be your better options. And plus, it's going to help you sleep better. It just has a lot of great benefits for magnesium. Your vitamin D levels, make sure your vitamin D levels get those analyzed. 70 to 100 is what we really want to see. That's like the key areas you want to get with your vitamin D. If your vitamin D is at like 35 to 40 and they're saying you're fine, no, you're not. Your levels are way too low, you're deficient, and you're gonna see impacts of that. And then probably the last one, omega-3s,
Yeah.
right? Your fatty acids, we don't get enough of them. I don't care if you're eating salmon every day, you still not get enough of it. You wanna make sure you get those fatty acids in, omega-3s, EPA, DHA. I recommend typically somewhere between about 1 to 3,000 milligrams a day is what most people ideally need. A good source, don't go buy it from Walmart or Costco. Those are not good quality. Dump them in the toilet. That's where they belong. Get a good source from a practitioner or like a health food store that you have trust in.
Yeah, I love that. That's amazing. All right, I have to ask you with your labs, do you see common themes? Like when we're thinking about women in this box, do you see common themes that come up through these kind of two core labs that you like to run?
We're gonna go back to the big A word. The adrenal glands are very, very common. But I will tell you, all too often I see a lot of women coming to us that are being told they're in adrenal fatigue and they're not in adrenal fatigue, right? They're in adrenal stress,
Yeah.
but not adrenal fatigue situation because it's thrown around like the wellness situation.
Yeah.
Leaky gut, a massive one. Leaky gut is so common that you can probably just throw that core up there and you're gonna get every single time you're gonna see that heads come up. It's leaky gut type of thing going on, which means poor absorption, poor digestion, microbiome, bowel inflammation.
Yeah.
It's just bowel issues, everything. Um, and the probably the third one is well, of course, inflammation is going to be a massive one. People are experiencing inflammation is a common thing. We test like 5 or 6 different markers alone of inflammation. But where's the inflammation coming from? Is it coming from a chronic infection pattern, parasites, or is it toxic burden? It's one of those three things, or it could be all of them. One thing I would say as well is if you get evaluated and you have toxins, you pretty much can guarantee you also have parasites. They always track with each other
Yeah.
because parasites are very difficult to identify.
Yeah.
I mean, you could get a blood test done and get under a microscope and see that, but oftentimes these guys are hiding in your brain, your eyes, your heart, your lungs, your kidneys. You can't evaluate for that. But what we do see when we see toxin burn-in, you can pretty much guarantee you have parasites that need to be addressed as well.
What are the markers you like to run for inflammation or you like to look to for
One of them is C-reactive protein,
Yeah.
a phenomenal marker. Not only does it show systemic inflammation, but cardiovascular risk. And if that comes up high, then especially for these perimenopausal and menopausal women, if you have a high CRP, you want to run 3 additional tests, right? The first one is an ApoB test. That should be, so let me go back. C-reactive protein should be less than 1. Anything above a 1 is showing elevation. Anything above a 3 is very, very high and very dangerous. ApoB should it depends on the person you're speaking to, but anywhere below 40 or 60, anything below that, like 60 for sure, but some people say below 40 even. If you're high, then it's a very strong correlation that for heart disease, basically that's showing for. And then LPA, LP little a is another one. Only have to run that one time in your life. If it is elevated, it's a genetic component to cardiovascular risk. If you see those things, if you have C-reactive protein, ApoB high, both those high, then you can do a couple different things beyond that. One of them is you can run a calcium score, and the reason why you can run a calcium score is because it's typically covered by insurance, right? Your doctors can run that for you and covered by insurance. Now the problem with it is that if your cholesterol is not calcified, it's going to come back as a false negative, right? So then you because that's only showing the calcification of cholesterol, it's not really showing the full calcification or the cholesterol buildup in the arteries. So the next step on top of that is a CT scan with clearly, and that is Cleerly because this is typical CT scan, but they run it through basically a program called Clearly, which can identify very specifically cholesterol buildup. Now you know if you truly have a real risk or not.
Wow.
Because C-reactive protein ApoB are just relative risk factors. Doesn't tell you exactly what's going on, but the CT scan would clearly really identifies that. Now it's a more expensive test, oftentimes not covered by insurance. That's why it's the last one you want to run if you're really concerned about that. And if you are, now you know you have a problem, and now you can go to help to get that.
Yeah.
Second, inflammation test we look at is homocysteine. Now, homocysteine is a very important one as well because again, it tells us about systemic inflammation, but it also is correlated directly with brain inflammation, and it can lead to things like dementia and Alzheimer's because inflammation is fire, right? And when you're in those tissues are under fire for many years, you can start to break them down. But we've also seen very interesting that homocysteine has been shown to cause spasmodic events in the cardiac arteries. So you could have someone who dies of a heart attack, no cloggage at all, zero cloggage, but because it creates this hypoxic event inside the arteries by spasming it for enough time, the person dies from a heart attack. So homocysteine should never be above a 7. Anything above a 7 is indicating inflammation and needs to be brought down below a 7.
Yeah.
Uric acid is another one I like to look at. Now, this one's often associated with things like gout. I believe the marker is 6.5 for gout. We ideally like to see below 5.5, which is not only is it showing joint inflammation because you get the crystallizations in the joints,
Yeah.
but it is correlating with that systemic inflammatory response. So those are three major ones. Again, I guarantee your doctor's not running these tests.
No.
Any one of those three,
Yeah.
they're not running them.
Yeah, I agree. That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that with me. It just as a practitioner, it's like I know these are ones that I like to look at as well. So I always like to hear, am I missing something? What's going on? How do you view it? And I always thought homocysteine, yes, inflammation, but I looked at it a little bit more as methylation marking. So it's
That too. That too.
accurate to hear of it as that inflammatory marker as well.
I just assume these days that everyone has a methylation issue.
Yeah.
Just there's no reason to even test for it anymore because the stats are so high that you have so many. I was getting a lot of those genetic tests when it was really big for a while there, and I mean, like every 4 to 5 people had the NTHFR, NTRR, or whatever. It's like just assume that everyone needs methylated vitamins these days.
Pretty safe. Pretty safe to say.
100%. It's better to be safe than sorry and give someone that. And it's interesting. I went to Sprouts like not too long ago, and I was looking at their B vitamins, and they had like 6 on the wall there, and like 2 of them are methylated.
Oh,
The
interesting.
other 4. So even some of these health food stores, you got to be very good about looking at the back of the bottle. Don't assume that's going to be in methylated form on there. Look for that, methylcobalamin or that the components that are telling you they're methylated in the bottle itself.
Yeah, it can be so confusing for people, which is why I think,
Yeah.
just coming back to your point of I really agree with you that I'm hoping that more and more people are starting to recognize like, okay, my health is of value to invest in, to save in, to think at the same way I do my financial future, the same way I do my children's future, things like that. So, um,
I mean, it has to be. We only get one body,
that's true. Can't buy enough.
right?
Yeah.
We gotta take care of this. It should be so important. And yes, it's hard to wake up early to go work out and hard to make that food and hard to buy the organic. It's so much more expensive than the non-organic. But the reality is you're not doing it for today. You're doing it for 10 years down the road.
And it gets easier. I mean, change is hard, but once you move through a transition, it's really not that hard, I find anyways. The new way
I agree.
and then it's like, oh, this is old hat. I just brush my teeth.
Yeah.
I make my
Especially those who live in a world of habitualness like I do. I'm very habitual. Whereas my wife is not. She's more free spirited.
wow.
Like she's like, I'm like, okay, we've been together for how many years, and how many times have we been early to an event, like, or on time to an event even? But it's like that song, like "Waiting on a Woman" type of thing. It's like it is, and and I love that because I'm like so regimented, and she's not that yin and yang type of thing.
Yeah.
But at a certain time, you're like, well, that you have to have some sort of habitualness because that's what's going to help you with longevity.
Yeah. And just in general, like in correction, like when we're actually needing to correct a situation, I think thinking of your body like we do our babies. We have our
Yep.
babies on a very, regimented schedule because they thrive in that.
Yep.
And it's hard for the free-spirited ones, but there's always these funny memes out there is that there's someone who's very regimented and someone who's free spirit and they marry each other. That's how
Right.
it works. So
That's right. That's right.
I get
Because who wants to be with another person like you? You're like, oh my gosh, no, I don't want.
yeah. Dr. Jason, this has been amazing, enlightening. I see, certainly why you're making such an impact, and I'm really grateful. Did I miss anything today? Is there anything else you want to share with the women listening?
I don't think so. I think we've hit everything pretty well at this point. I think we have a good. But if any questions pop up, let me know. I'll be happy to answer.
Yeah, for sure. How can we get into your world? What do you have going on right now? Where do we find you? And do you have anything that we can be grabbing and downloading or reading right now to get more information from you? Because this has been wonderful.
Yeah, for those that are looking to get more optimization in their blood sugar and insulin resistance, or even to identify if it's even going on. And one more thing before I do that, if you don't mind,
Yeah.
is I would like to say this because if anybody is thinking, okay, how do I identify if insulin resistance is a potential problem for me? There's one test you can do on from looking at your normal testing, and that is looking at your triglycerides to HDL ratio, right? You probably are aware of this, right? And so what we ideally want to see, again, everyone's got their own little opinions, but that ratio should be somewhere no higher than 1.5 or even 2, right? And so 1.5 and below is like optimal. Below 2, you're probably like in your, but anything above that, or even like the 3 or 4, like you are already showing signs. Even though your blood sugars aren't an issue yet, your A1C is still fine, you're developing insulin resistance going on. It's that spread between HDL and triglycerides.
Yeah.
So looking at that is an easy thing you do on your test to say, oh my gosh, I'm seeing some insulin resistance here. Now you want to go identify why that's happening. And for those who are looking to work with someone like me or get more information, my website is probably the best spot to go to. It's drshumard.com. So drshumard.com. Make it super simple. And there we have a lot of great information, but more importantly, you can register for my webinar. I've got a phenomenal webinar that goes a lot deeper into what's currently being done in the medical model that's missing out on so many individuals, and what you can do right now to start impacting your health before it becomes a problem in the future.
Amazing. And how do we access that webinar? Is it right on your website?
Right on the website there's a link there. You can go as a registration. So you just register for it. You have the option. You can watch the one that's coming up that we're doing, or if you want to watch a previous one, if you're like rushing time, you want to kind of do it on your own time, you can watch an older one as well.
Amazing. I will make sure all of those are in the show notes. Thank you so much for your time today, for your energy, and for your knowledge. It's been really helpful for me, and I know the women listening.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, sisters, now I think you have some great information, some great tools to go out, be more in your life, and not just less on a scale. We'll catch you in the next episode.
If you're 35 plus and ready to stop guessing, start understanding your hormones, and feel your absolute best, hit subscribe. That's what we do here.